Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I am your host, Noah Jones, and today I'm going to tell you why XXL's freshman class is always awful year after year after year after year. I'm going to explain to you why they pick some of the worst lyrical artists or worst capable or just awful rappers in general to represent their freshman class. Granted, there's always one or two sprinkled in there that are pretty decent, or pretty dope for that matter, but 95% of it is always awful. I'm going to explain that to you. Now, before we get into that, let me explain to you what XXL used to be. Years ago, before the digital age of music, before we consumed music through streaming, through digital downloads, we're talking all the way back when, you had to actually go to a music store to find your music, like Tower Records or Target or Walmart or Best Buy or some of these other places that, independent artists never really could get their music in because it was pretty much only for major record label releases, etc., etc. You had to pay a distributor. There was a whole lot of red tape that was going on. Back then, there were three main magazine publications that dealt with showcasing rappers and their talent. You had the Source magazine, you had the Vibe magazine, and you had the XXL magazine. What happened was, as the internet started really booming and blossoming, and we started making advancements and stuff like that as far as technology, what happened was a lot of the physical magazines died off. And basically what happened was we turned to the internet to be our new source of how we find all the new music and all the new talent. So it pretty much made magazines like The Source, The Vibe, XXL, pretty useless. Because now you could just go online and there's ways of finding out who's hot without it being showcased in these magazines. So, everything went digital instead of, physical paper magazines. So what happened was XXL started showcasing, some of their hottest talent, some of the up-and-coming artists. So year after year, they would have a freshman class which showcased the best artists at that particular time, and they would rate them, and they would, explain why they chose these particular artists. Now I'm going to let you know as to why they always pick the worst artists. It's pretty simple. The worst artists they pick, meaning if they pick the worst artist that can possibly be picked, the more people like us are going to talk about it. The more we talk about it, the more we build up the hype to want to see who's going to be next year's freshman. You know what I mean? It's all a gimmick for these people, especially for XXL. It's a gimmick. What happens is they say, look, we put out a whack list. We'll have people talking about our freshman class for the next 5 or 6 months. People are going to be debating it. They're going to be debating it on Twitter. They're going to be debating it on Facebook. They're going to be debating it on YouTube. You're going to have us, they have us looking out for these garbage artists and then commenting on their posts like, yo, that shit was terrible. So what happens is by them picking the worst amount of art, the worst type of artists, it frustrates us so much to where we have to interact and we have to leave our point of view about how bad it is. This extends the life and the time span of the freshman class. Think about it like this. If all the artists on the freshman class were dope, everybody pretty much would accept it, and nobody would be talking about it in less than a week. Like a week would go by and nobody would give a fuck anymore because everybody agrees that the artists are dope. So what they do is they say, look, in order to keep us relevant, in order for us to keep a job, in order for us to still be talked about as a magazine or as a company, we just gonna put out an awful ass list. And people are gonna debate about it and go back and forth about it for about 5 or 6 months until the following year when we release the next garbage, freshman class. Now, one of the freshman classes that were really, really, really dope, which is before they started, doing this bullshit they doing now, There was a freshman class that had Nipsey in it. There was the same freshman class had Nipsey, J-Rock, I think Wiz Khalifa was in there. That's when they were picking artists that actually were talented. You know what I mean? That was like the last cutoff point to where majority of the list was pretty talented. And a lot of those artists today still have careers. Whereas ever since then, a lot of these rappers is one and done, like Trinidad James. They have one little single and it's a rap. You know what I'm saying? But they do this shit for shock value. Put out the worst possible ratings, the worst possible artists, and get everybody talking about it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the scheme behind the XXL freshman class. To get everybody to keep talking so that way they can go on these radio shows and, you know, they doing interviews with Ebro and you know what I'm saying? On major radio stations explaining why they picked whatever artist was that they picked. Or they over there with Charlemagne the God and they're explaining why they picked these artists. It's really not scientific the way they do that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's really like, okay, who's garbage right now that we can say is hot? They putting whack artists on a pedestal. You know what I mean? And it's working. You know, sadly enough, it's working and we're talking about it. So that being said, I just wanted to let you know why all of these artists are garbage or why the XXL freshman class is awful every year. That's the game plan behind it. So make sure you leave a comment in the comment section. You know, if there's a couple of artists you think are dope, shout them out. And make sure you click like, subscribe, and share. And this has been another episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm your boy Noah Jones, and we out of here. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.